What's up, you guys? It's day 16 of the May LeetCode challenge of 2020. Today's problem is odd even linked list. So let's go through the problem. Given a singly linked list, group all odd nodes together followed by even nodes. Please note here we are talking about node number and not the node value. So the node number and not its value. So if it's 1, then it's odd. The first node is odd, then we move on to the next node, which is 2, which is an even node. So basically what it's saying is we have to group together all the odd nodes. So node number 1, 3, 5, 7 and so on and so forth, followed by node number 2, 4, 6, 8 and the rest of it. So the odd nodes come first and then come the even nodes. Now again it says you should try doing it in place. The program should run in O1 space complexity and O nodes time complexity. Got it. So as I was telling you before, we're given, let's go through this example and let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the linked list, followed by a null, which basically tells us that the linked list terminates here. So the first node, which is 1, then the third node, which is 3, apparently they've got the same values, but yeah. So node number 1, node number 3, node number 5 are the first 3 nodes, followed by node number 2, node number 4. So those are our nodes in the given odd even order. Let's look at the other example. So this is a little better. So we're given node number 1, which is 2, node number 2, which is 1, node number 3, which is 3, node number 4, which is 5. So all the odd nodes 2, 3, 6, 7 should precede 1, 5 and 4. So let's look at the output, which is 2, 3, 6, 7, and then we get 1, 5, 4 and then none. So another note, the relative order inside both even and odd should remain as it was in the output. Fair enough. The first node is considered odd, the second one is considered even, and so on. Yeah, as we already discussed. So in order to approach this problem, what we can start with is we already have the head node. So let's basically create an even list that we're going to be maintaining. So list node even list. This will point to head next. So head next would basically be pointing to an even node. We will also need an even helper, which basically is going to point to even list. So even list or we could basically name it as even head. So, and this is head. So what happens here is even head is going to be pointing to our even list, which starts from head next in a given list. So if you look here, this is what the even list is going to point to. I mean the even head, and our helper is also initially going to point here. It's then going to start skipping from 2 to 4 and so forth. And similarly, we will need an odd helper, which is going to point to the head node. So the head node starts with a 1 here in this example, which is our first value and which is odd, which is the first one, and then it's going to point to 3 and 5 and so on and so forth. So we will have to check before this we also should put in an edge case or our base case, which would check if head is null, we simply return head. Now back to a while loop. So we're checking for the head even head. With the even helper, we are already pointing to head next. So we're going to be using even head here. Even helper here. So even helper, because it's ahead of the odd helper. If this is not null, at the same time, if even helper dot next is not null. So what this basically means is, if our even helper has become a null node, it's reached the end here, or it's at this location, for example, and its next is null, so we're going to stop there, because that's our termination point, because our odd is already reached this null location. The head will be let's just go through this example once. Our odd is going to be at 1, our even is going to be at 2. Now when we go through the loop, we check for if even head is the next is null or not, and our even head next is not null. So head next, this our even node is not null, obviously, since it's here, even helper, and even helper next is not null. We are going to now basically point the the odd helper to this location, and our even helper is going to basically become the next node of odd node, which is over here. So it becomes this. Now we go through the loop again, we check if even node is null, which is not, and next is also not null, which is also not true. We basically move here to number 5 when we're here at number 5, we're basically going to be removing the value of even helper, and even helper now becomes null, because even helper is going to be pointing to the odd dot next. So it's going to become a lot more clear when I'm going to write it here. So let's just go through this. Odd helper dot next is equal to even helper dot next. So basically odd helper is now pointing to whatever value is pointed by even helper to its next, which is going to obviously be our even value. Now we make odd helper is equal to odd helper dot next. So now odd helper is basically pointing to whatever value is next to the odd helper. We will now turn to even helper dot next, which will be odd helper dot next. So odd helper is already pointing to a value which is the next value in this list, and now when we're going to be pointing even helper dot next is going to basically be pointing to the next value of the odd helper, which is going to be an even value. So when we move further, we will have to set for even helper equal to even helper dot next. So now if we just quickly go through this piece of code here, what it basically does is odd helper, which is its value next. So odd helper initially was pointing here and even helper was pointing here. So the first line of code, odd helper dot next is equal to even helper dot next, what it does is basically odd helper now will be the value which is pointed next by the even helper. So that's 3. Next up, we make sure that odd helper now becomes odd helper dot next. Basically, odd helper now points to this value. So odd helper was initially here. Its next value now points to 3, and we make sure that we've traversed further and we've reached node number 3 for odd helper, so that odd helper dot next points to 4. Now moving on to the second line of code, which basically tells us, the third line of code, which basically tells us even helper dot next is equal to odd helper dot next. So when we write even helper dot next equal to odd helper dot next, it's basically saying that even helper, which is at point 2, which was initially pointing to 3, now its next value should point to 4. So we move further and we make sure that even helper is equal to even helper dot next, which means that even helper should now move from 2 to 4, and so on and so forth. This loop continues. All we now need to do is set, so in our example, which is this, our odd list, it looks like 1, 3 and 5, but 5 is not pointing to anything else right now, and our even list looks like 2, 4, right, and which points to null value for now. So all we need to do is at whatever value odd helper is, we just set its next value to the even head, and that should basically give us the odd even list. So let's do it. Odd helper dot next is equal to even head. So this basically points the last value in the odd list, its next value, to the head of the even list, and we simply return our value, which is head here. So we've modified the list in place. Let's run it to see if we've got any errors. We don't. The answer is as expected. Let's submit it, and it's accepted. Cool. Let's see how we did. We passed all 71 of 71 cases. The runtime is 0 ms, and looks like we're in the 100th percentile. Let's refresh. Yeah. Hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for watching.